Hey everybody, welcome back. It's another episode of Jake Talks Star Wars, and today we are talking about Season 1, Episode 10 of Star Wars Rebels, The Path of the Jedi. This is a great episode. If I remember right from when it was first released, it was kind of treated as like a mid-season finale before they took a little break for a couple of weeks. If I remember right, I could be wrong. But it's a great episode, and it's following up on the two-parter we had last time, where Ezra encounters Sibo, and Ezra accidentally taps into the dark side. So Kanan has decided that it's really time for them to do something to really determine if Ezra is cut out for this Jedi lifestyle, if he is cut out for being a Jedi and being is steeped in the Force this way. So Kanan, they do an away mission, right? It's going to be the Kanan and Ezra show. So I'm going to go away for some Jedi training, and the whole point is that Kanan is kind of putting himself in the hands of Ezra. He is telling Ezra, like, you're going to decide where we go because you are going to trust in the Force. You're going to meditate on the Force. You're going to guide where we go. Kanan has an idea of where they could go, where they might go, but he's not sure. But he's not telling Ezra that. So Ezra has to really meditate on the Force and clear his mind and let the Force guide him where to go. And the Force ends up guiding him to a Jedi temple on Lothal, on his home planet. Ezra had no idea that there was a Jedi temple on Lothal. Kanan himself had to consult the holocron that he has to learn that there was a Jedi temple on Lothal. So even Kanan didn't know. He had to look it up. And he had a suspicion this is where they might go, but like he says in the episode, he wasn't sure. But it makes sense. And that kind of fits into something I've been talking about in other videos. We've got the Force working through Ezra to kind of create Ezra into this Jedi that is going to be a Jedi for the larger galaxy, sure, but also be a Jedi for Lothal, like a protector for Lothal. And that kind of fits into something I was mentioning in another video a few days ago, where what if we get these disparate Force traditions where they're centered on single planets, they're centered on the line of a certain Jedi who survived Order 66, but they end up kind of staying local and then serving their planet or serving the Force in different ways. And then later on, Rey brings these together. But that's talked about that more in another video. Today we're talking about Episode 10, Path of the Jedi, Star Wars Rebels. So they find this temple, and they have to unlock the temple together, right? As master and apprentice, they have to unlock the temple together. And Ezra's asking Kanan all sorts of questions, like, is this what it was like for you? Did you do something like this? And he says, no, I didn't do any of this, right? Everything was different back then. Now there's just the Force. These Jedi, these Jedi out in the wilderness have to rely on themselves, and more importantly, they have to rely on the Force. So things are totally different for them. We get into the temple. They open the temple together. We get into the temple, and the temple shuts behind them, like, immediately. And we see skeletons, like these spooky, we're in spooky season. We see these spooky skeletons of Jedi Masters whose apprentices went in on this trial and never returned. So I think, again, a little bit of spooky. And Ezra is like, wow, whoa, what do you mean? You're trusting me with your life? And Kanan's response is, well, yeah, you're trusting me with your training, by extension, Ezra's life. So he has to trust Ezra too. So he's going to stay behind while Ezra goes in to do this trial. Now, what we see in the temple is kind of like what Luke did on Dagobah in the cave, but like on steroids, right? Because it lasts longer and it's a little bit more drawn out. But Ezra is going to go in, and he's going to end up facing his fears. He's in the temple. He thinks he sees Kanan. He thinks Kanan, he encounters the Inquisitor. The Inquisitor kills Kanan. and then he's transported back to the Ghost, and he hears people on the Ghost talking ill about him, talking negatively about him, which hurts his feelings, which makes him feel bad, which feeds that doubt, right? Because remember, this is all about testing his faith in the Force, testing his faith in himself and his faith in the Force. So these visions are hitting him with doubt and with fear and with anxiety, and they're doing all this, and he's seeing all this loss stack up. He's lost Kanan, and then Sabine and Zeb and Hera are all killed by the Inquisitor in this vision, and he's having trouble discerning what's real and what's not. And eventually it all just clicks for him. The Inquisitor is looking at him. He says, yeah, I'm afraid, but I'm not afraid of being alone. I've been alone before. I can be alone again. I've survived being alone before. I can survive being alone again. I'm afraid I can't, I'm afraid of losing people. I'm afraid of letting people down. I'm afraid of, that. But he knows that, he can't, he's afraid of it. He doesn't want to do it, but he's looking for that strength to avoid that. And the Inquisitor goes to strike him down. And Ezra defiantly stands there and says, I am not afraid. So he's not afraid of dying himself. He's afraid of these other things. He says, I am not afraid. Much like Luke did, right? On the Death Star, Return of the Jedi. I'm not afraid. And so, much like Luke did in Dagobah and everywhere else, I am not afraid. Ezra says, I am not afraid. And when the Inquisitor goes to strike him, the lightsaber just passes harmlessly through him, and the vision disappears. And then we hear Yoda. Now, Ezra doesn't know it's Yoda, right? For all Ezra knows, this is a disembodied voice that is just strange and weird, but he doesn't know who it is. He doesn't know that it's Yoda, because he's never heard of Yoda, right? So he starts to interact with this voice, with Yoda, and Yoda is giving him a pep talk. And Yoda is asking him all the same stuff he asked Luke, why must you be a Jedi? And he lists off all these things. He's like, I'm going to make the Empire pay. I'm going to make the Empire pay. I'm going to make the Empire suffer. I'm going to make them pay for what they did to my family and what they did to the galaxy and everything else. And Yoda says, oh, so revenge. You want revenge. The Jedi way is revenge. Did your master teach you that? And Ezra immediately gets defensive. He's like, no, of course not. Kanan is incredible master. I know that the Jedi way is not revenge. But I am just, that's where, and he kind of struggles finding the words. And eventually he finds the words that, the real reason he wants to be a Jedi is to protect himself, to protect his friends, to protect everybody. That's why he seeks this power. And that's where it clicks for Yoda, right? Because that's what Yoda wants to hear, right? Remember what Yoda says in Empire Strikes Back. Wars do not make one great. Why must you be a Jedi? And the whole point here is that this power should not be used for attack. It should be used for knowledge and defense. And Ezra talks about how before he encountered Kanan and Ezra and the whole team, he was only looking inwards. He was only looking at himself and taking care of himself and surviving and being. I don't think that greedy is the right word, because Ezra didn't really have greed, but he was focused on his own survival, and he would help others. We see that in episode 1. He would help others, but he would also help himself first. And so he sees this team being selfless, right? He sees this team being selfless, and he sees how it makes them feel. And Yoda pushes him, and he says, it makes them feel alive. It makes me feel alive. And that's a really important message, because, and that we can take from Star Wars. Remember back in, I talk about this, that Star Wars is often a way that it's a morality tale, right? So the morality here is that those with power should use their power for knowledge and defense and protection and helping. lift others up. They shouldn't use their power to punch down and to hurt and harm and seek revenge, right? They shouldn't use their power for those sorts of things. They should use their power for lifting up and for protecting and for defense and for knowledge, right? Especially defense of those who can't defend themselves, right? That's what power is for. That's the meaning. That's the reason you should seek power. And that's what people who have power should use it for, right? That's the message here. So with that, Yoda, he kind of gets the, he kind of gives Ezra the okay. And you see this kyber crystal appear. And it's so funny because Ezra has no idea what a kyber crystal even is. He's like, oh, neat, a rock, He has no idea what a kyber crystal is. But he knows that he got it. He knows it's important. So he goes back to Kanan. And Kanan is having a similar discussion with Yoda. Now, Kanan knows it's Yoda, right? Kanan's old enough to remember Yoda. He's met Yoda personally. So he's having this discussion. And Yoda is working him through his own self-doubts, saying, hey, you got to be sure about this. You can't just do this because you think it's a cool thing to do. You got to be sure about training this kid. You got to be sure about being a Jedi. So, Kanan gets his little pep talk from Yoda as well, which is, again, really important in this moment. And then when Ezra finds his way back to Kanan, he realizes, hey, wow, you have a kyber crystal. That's incredible. And Kanan, Ezra goes, what the heck is a kyber crystal? It's a lightsaber crystal, silly. Yeah, it's a lightsaber crystal, dummy. This is important. You're going to build a lightsaber now. This is a huge step on your path to becoming a Jedi. And again, not because the weapon is a weapon, right? Because it's a spiritual connection with the kyber, but also it's a thing that he can use to defend himself and defend others, right? That's why it only appeared to him after he had that realization, right? He's not using this to seek power and seek revenge. He's using this to protect himself and protect others, is the hope. So at the end of the episode, we get to see that Kanan, Ezra, the whole team, Kanan, Sabine, Hera, they all provided parts to Ezra. They all provided parts, and he's building his lightsaber. And he comes down, and he hands his lightsaber over to Kanan, and it's a weird-looking lightsaber. Kanan doesn't really get it, and he says, it looks good. So Ezra turns it on, and now he's got this lightsaber. So we'll get to see that in action, in the future episodes. But yeah, great episode. I love the design of Ezra's lightsaber. The design of Ezra's first lightsaber, he's got, the lightsaber hilt, but then it's got it looks like a guard, like a hand guard coming out, like you would have on like a saber, or like an 18th century saber, like a boarding sword or something like that. On like a boarding sword or something, it would look like brass knuckles you could use to guard your hand or bash. But on Ezra's lightsaber, it's a blaster. So he's got a lightsaber and a blaster built into one, which makes sense because he is, he's untrained in the ways of lightsabers. So he needs all the edge he can get to kind of switch back and forth and be unpredictable, right? Because he's not learning the way that typical regular Jedi learn. So, but that's something we're going to see more in the next episodes. So yeah, this is a great episode. I really love this episode. I love how this episode tackles why Ezra wants to be a Jedi and why Jedi seek power, and how and our relationship with our power and our relationship with how we should use our power. So I really love that, because again, it's something that, especially as I've grown older, I've really started to focus more and more on. Like, when you have power and strength, yeah, you can use it to dominate and to destroy and to conquer, but that's just going to lead to more and more heartache and more struggle. But when you use your power to protect and to build and to help, I think it leads to just generally a much better life for yourself and for others around you. And you're going to feel a lot better too. So these are important messages kind of embedded in Star Wars, embedded in a kid's cartoon. So again, I think it's great. I really enjoyed this episode. It's a great episode. So stay tuned for upcoming episodes of Jake Talks Star Wars. We are still on our march towards Star Wars Celebration in under 2 years. April 2027. We're still headed in that direction. I'm very, very excited every day. Get more excited every day, and I really appreciate everybody who watches these videos. I know that it's still a small channel. I get a few videos on each, or a few views on each video. There's somebody, I don't know who's liking every video almost as soon as it's released. So that's awesome. Whoever you are out there, I see you. I appreciate you liking every video right as the minute it gets released. That's awesome. And I appreciate all of you who listen, watch, whatever. If you have any questions, put your questions down in the comments here on YouTube. You can also hit me up on Threads or on Instagram. And make sure, and remember, as always, make sure to take care of each other out there. And may the Force be with you. I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.